Hi everybody and welcome to Heel Heat. My name is George Coles, and on this episode, we're going to talk about the mystery man from Survivor Series. Now, if you didn't watch Survivor Series and you've avoided the recaps, there are going to be a bit of spoilers in this video. So if you don't want to check the spoilers, please click off until you find out for yourself. With that being said, we're not going to go through a full Survivor Series review. To be totally transparent, I didn't watch it, and I'm probably not going to based on what I've seen the reviews for it. But I do want to talk about this one specific moment. And this was during the men's Survivor Series match, War Games match. There was a guy dressed in all black from head to toe, black boots, black pants, black shirt, black mask, and he climbed into the ring, super kicked CM Punk, and then curb stomped him. Now, the obvious implications is it's Seth Rollins coming to get revenge, which kind of doesn't make much sense on a couple levels. First, the way that he was written off of TV being attacked by the Vision, why would he help them again? Also, I feel like if they did another fake injury issue with Seth Rollins, that it would turn away more of the fans than it would excite. But I don't think that that's it, and I'm going to tell you the logistical reason why here in a moment. And then I want to give some, I guess you could say for lack of a better word, theories or fantasy bookings that I think could happen. Now, and if you hear that in the background, there's a train going by. Sorry about that. Now, according to PW Insider, they put out a report today saying basically, and this is going to be a spoiler, so again, if you don't want to see spoilers, you might want to click off this video. They put out a report saying that the person behind the mask, behind the black garb, was Austin Theory. Which kind of matches up because for the last several months we've heard that Austin Theory was going to be part of this Survivor Series War Games team and then he would be added to the Vision team. So it kind of makes sense. And I like Austin Theory. I think this would be a good place for him to come back. I don't think it's tremendously inspired though. The Austin Theory that we saw last was basically getting a babyface reaction. And for the progression of his career, I don't know that being part of a group where he's going to be the second or third or even fourth most important person is going to help him too much. But we'll see where they go with that, if it does end up being Theory. Because here's what I'm thinking. Just because Theory was behind the mask that night doesn't mean that he's going to be the man behind the mask long term. Let's call it the Black Scorpion paradox. When the Black Scorpion was terrorizing Sting, it was several different wrestlers that were under the mask that would attack him. Part of that was they didn't know who was going to be long term. Part of that was to keep the guessing going. And this is where I'd like to throw in some, I guess, again, like I said earlier, a little bit of fantasy booking. While Theory would be a good choice, I like the idea of it. I want to give some more that I think I would enjoy better. One theory, for lack of a better term, let's say it is Seth Rollins, but they're just using Austin Theory until Seth is actually fully healed up. I don't know what the time frame on his recovery is, but let's say he's back by Royal Rumble or Elimination Chamber, and Theory could be the placeholder doing these attacks all the way up to like Elimination Chamber, who then unmasks and it's Seth Rollins. That would be one way to do it. I think, again, I don't think it would go over so well because we would feel like he faked his injury, even though he didn't. But it's one way they could go with it. The next way I think that could really help is to use it to elevate some people already on their roster. And I have 3 people that I think could use this, and it would put like a rocket ship to their back. They don't necessarily have to be aligned with the Vision. They just have to be anti-CM Punk. And the 3 guys I would like to see fit that role: first, Montez Ford. We've heard for years and years now that they're looking to split Montez Ford off and make him a solo star, and he would be a top-level solo star, but they've yet to pull the trigger on that. This could be the spot. This could be where he comes out. And you could even do a thing where Dawkins doesn't even know that Ford is doing this. And when he's revealed, then there's the obvious, well, what happens with Dawkins? Is Dawkins with him? Is Dawkins against him? Do you turn Angelo Dawkins a babyface? Which I think would be a great role for him, to put him in that babyface role, because I think Angelo Dawkins gets too much of a shadow on him being next to Montez. Montez Ford is probably one of the better athletes in WWE, and it's obvious he's going to be a superstar. But Angelo Dawkins is very good as well. And I'm going to say something, and this is going to come off a little bit dismissive if you're not really someone that's paid attention to wrestling, but I could see Angelo Dawkins being like this generation's D'Lo Brown. A solid tag wrestler, a solid mid-card wrestler, a highly entertaining guy, someone that you want to cheer for on his own, being out of the Street Profits. But anyway, I digress. That's just my first idea. My second, Aleister Black. Now, I know he's got the whole thing going with Priest, and it's been shown on TV that Priest and Punk have at least in the past been allies, so maybe that's a way to step him up into that main event picture, to put him in a bigger role. He could still have his thing with Priest, which also helps elevate Priest. Priest is maybe part of a three-way feud. But I just think it's a way to get him into where basically most of us wrestling fans have seen him for the last 10 years, being an upper card guy, even though it hasn't necessarily worked out in either company he's been in. But for that, I think it could be the push that gets him to that. Now, my next and last of these three, Carmelo Hayes. I absolutely love Carmelo Hayes. I think his potential is through the roof. I think he could be as high of a potential as this generation's Shawn Michaels. And on the low end, I could see his potential being Owen Hart. And if you look at those two names, there really isn't that much of a difference. I mean, Owen Hart's one of the guys that I think should have been a main eventer but never was, except for obviously a few matches against Brett. But you get what I mean. He should have been in the world title picture more than he was. And I think that's the floor for Carmelo. And I think the ceiling is Shawn Michaels, one of the greats of all time. So having him going to this, even though I know he just went into a face role, or more of a face role, I think this would help him tremendously. And let's not forget, everyone talks about how much they love the Attitude Era and they want to bring the Attitude Era back and all that. Well, part of that was surprise turns. A guy could turn face one week and then a month later turn back heel, and vice versa. So doing something like this is not unprecedented. It would be a little bit surprising and jarring in this generation, but we need surprising and jarring to give us that excitement, to make us want to tune in, to make us not want to miss the premium live events. So yeah, I would love for it to be Melo. I think he would fit the role perfectly. Next up is a guy that has been rumored to be signing back with WWE and may not be contractually available just yet, so that's why they're using a placeholder for right now, and that's Y2J Chris Jericho. Where I do think Jericho is coming back, I mean, all the signs point to it, unless he's just using this as a supreme bargaining chip with AEW and to get Tony Khan to pay him even more money. I think Jericho wants to finish his career in WWE and wants to have that spotlight. He wants to be considered one of the greatest of all time. He's already in that conversation. He's already in a lot of people's top 5 or top 10 all time. But what better way to solidify that with having a retirement run in WWE. And to bring him back, I mean, Jericho's not going to come back and be the guy that's jerking the curtain. He's going to come back to be at the upper mid-card main event and stay there. I mean, no matter what company he's in. Will he be the guy that puts over the young guys, the Carmelo Hayes that I just mentioned, and some others, like maybe a Javon Evans or Obafemi? Probably he'll be willing to do that. He tried. I want to believe that he tried to do that in AEW, and to some extent it worked with some people, to others it didn't. But I think he'd still be willing to do that. And also, you know, you'd get the matches, of course, the ones that you've seen, but you still want to see Jericho and Rollins, Jericho and Punk, Jericho and McIntyre, Jericho and Cody. All of these matches we'd love to see again. Now, coming from that, this is basically my final 4, and this is what I would most like to see, and that's using this spot to make a guy in NXT a main roster star and bring him in with just that hype right off the bat. The first person that comes to mind is Ethan Page. Ethan Page, in my opinion, is someone that's main roster ready and has ever since he's come to NXT. I think with him, it's just a matter of time of bringing him up there. You could easily slide him in and he makes sense as a main eventer. I think he would work perfectly. His connection with Chelsea Green, established main roster talent, will also help him out there. So I think he'd be a great fit for this. Next up, similar, another guy that was main roster ready even before he signed NXT, and that's Ricky Saints. I think this could work, especially playing off of Ricky Saints and CM Punk's interactions in AEW. He could basically tell him, hey, you ran away from that other company before you could fight me. I think it would work well with him. I think he'd be a great person to use in this. Again, help bring him up to that main roster where I think he should have been already, basically. Now, my next guy, this is a guy that I think they're waiting to bring to the main roster, he's done pretty much everything he's going to do in NXT, and that's Tony D'Angelo. And I know a lot of people are going to look at him and look at the gimmick and kind of write him off because of that gimmick, but I love Tony D. I think he's taken that gimmick and he ran with it and he made it something very interesting. Now, while Tony D'Angelo may not be your best quote-unquote work rate wrestler, I think he's a great storyteller, and he kind of fits what I think Triple H's vision for the main event in WWE is, and that's more storyline driven wrestling matches. I don't think Triple H necessarily gives a crap about 5-star, 6-star matches in his main event. I think what he wants, and it's shown through the Bloodline story, through the Cody Rhodes story, I think he wants that high drama, that high stakes, story-driven match. And I think Tony D is a guy that fits that perfectly. I do think the gimmick will need to be tweaked a bit and needs to get away from the Goodfellas type thing a bit, but they could do that. They worked John Cena away from the Doctor of Thugonomics to make him just John Cena. They could do the same with Tony D here. I'd love to see it. I think he's great. I love Tony D, so that's why I think this would be a good idea. Now, last but not least, and probably other than Carmelo Hayes or Montez Ford, the thing I would love to see the most on here, and that's Saquon Sugars. Now, we've already seen Saquon Sugars have success in NXT. We already know that he's a guy that has a ton of potential. And for me, I think a lot of times wrestlers are left in NXT a little bit longer than they should be. This would be a case of fast-tracking a guy. You could bring him right onto the main roster, whether it be with his faction or just by himself, and he's instantly going to make an impact. I think, in my opinion, of the younger talent in NXT, he's one of the top 2 or 3, in my opinion, that are going to be high-level stars for the next decade and a half. Him, Javon Evans, and Obafemi, I would say, are the 3 biggest. And Trick Williams, I guess, if you consider him still being NXT, but I kind of feel like he's in limbo right now, where he's not necessarily an NXT guy, but not necessarily on the roster yet. So those 4, in my opinion, are the 4 guys that are going to be the big stars of the next decade and a half. Kind of like the equivalent of Orton, Cena, Batista, and Lesnar coming in. Hopefully with as much success as those 4 guys, because that's a big 4 to live up to. But I absolutely think Saquon Sugars can take this, can become basically a super rookie, a guy like Brock Lesnar that comes in and is in a dominant role right away. I'd love to see it. He would be my pick to do it with. I don't know how good the fans would react to it. I don't know how much of a crossover there is. I know analytically, not everyone that watches WWE like Raw or SmackDown watches NXT. So there are some fans that know and some fans that don't. So I don't know how the response would be. But the onus is on WWE to make him special. It's not on the fans to know who he is right away. You make him feel special and the fans will respond that way. But that's my opinion. My ultimate guy would be Saquon Sugars. Anyone I named here I'd like to see. Even Austin Theory. I'd love to see where they're going to go with Austin Theory if he does end up being the guy full time. But let me know what you think. Who do you think the guy behind the mask should be? Let me know in the comments. Do you think it should be Rollins? Should it be one of these guys I mentioned? Should it be someone I haven't talked about at all? Let me know your opinion down here. With all that being said, my name is George Coles, and you've been watching Heel Heat.